All right, welcome to the explainer. So you're looking at two companies, right? On paper, they seem almost identical, but you have this feeling which one is actually the better business? Well, there's a single number that can cut right through the noise and give you a massive clue. It's called return on assets, or ROA for short. And today, we're going to dig into how this one simple metric can uncover the real story of a company's efficiency. You know, the legendary investor Warren Buffett is famous for saying his goal is to find wonderful companies. It's like his whole mantra. But let's be real for a second. What does wonderful even mean? It sounds great, but when it's your actual money on the line, wonderful is just way too vague. So that's the real question, isn't it? How do we take that idea of wonderful and, turn it into a solid number we can actually work with? How do we spot the real profit-making machines versus the ones that are, well, just kind of meh? Okay, so to really get our heads around this, let's jump into a classic little story, a tale of two companies. It might seem simple, but believe me, this scenario perfectly illustrates the exact puzzle that investors are trying to solve every single day. So, picture this. An investor is looking at two companies. They're in the exact same business, the textile industry. We'll call them AB Textiles and DC Textiles. Now, if you just look at the surface, these two companies look like twins. I mean, they both have the exact same value of assets. Their factories, their equipment, all the stuff they need to run the business. Let's say it's 50 million rupees each. But, and this is the big but, this is where things get really interesting. Take a look at their profits. AB Textiles, they brought in 10 million. DC Textiles, on the other hand, only managed to make 7 million. See that? Same exact resources, but totally different results. And that right there is the million-dollar question, isn't it? They have the same amount of stuff, the same resources, but AB Textiles is absolutely crushing it when it comes to profit. Clearly, they're doing something smarter, something better. The trick? How do we prove it? We need a number, a metric that really measures that efficiency. So this is where we need to pull out a special tool from our investor toolkit. We can't just look at the raw profit number. No, we need a ratio, something that tells us exactly how much bang they're getting for their buck. How much profit they're squeezing out of every rupee they have in assets. And that special tool, that's return on assets, ROA. I mean, its whole job, its entire reason for being, is to tell us one thing. How good is a company's management at turning all their stuff, their assets, into cold, hard profit? Think of it like a little window that lets you peek at their secret playbook. And the best part? The formula is super simple. Seriously, you just take the company's profit after they've paid their taxes, and you divide it by their total assets. That's it. Profit on top, all the stuff they own on the bottom. Easy. Okay, so let's plug in the numbers for our two textile companies. And wow, the difference is night and day. AB Textiles clocks in with an awesome ROA of 20%. Think about that. For every 100 rupees of assets they own, they're cranking out 20 rupees in profit. And DC Textiles, they're lagging behind at just 14%. And just like that, the ROA has handed us a clear winner. There's no debate. AB Textiles is just flat out the more efficient company. All right, so 20% beats 14%. That part's a no-brainer. But hang on a second. Is 20% actually a good number, like in the grand scheme of things? Because that's the next critical piece of this puzzle. Any number by itself, floating in a vacuum, is pretty much useless. And asking that question is what really separates the beginners from the pros. You have to ask, is that 20% ROA truly world-class, or is it just average for this industry? Maybe everyone else is getting 25%. So how do you figure it out? Well, it's all about comparison. Two kinds, really. First, you've got to look sideways at their competition. How does this company stack up against all the other players in the same game? Are they leading the pack or just keeping up? Then, second, you have to look backwards. Look at the company's own track record. Is this a one-time thing, or have they been putting up strong, steady ROA numbers year after year? Because a truly wonderful company isn't a one-hit wonder. All right, now let's get into the really juicy stuff. We've basically been saying high ROA equals good. Simple enough. But what if I told you that sometimes a dropping ROA can actually be a great sign? Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but let's dive into this surprising twist. So just imagine this for a second. You're following a company you love. You know it's well run, it's been a solid performer for years, and then bam! You check the latest numbers and its ROA has taken a nosedive. what's your first reaction? For most people, it's probably panic, right? Time to sell. Okay, let's make this real with some numbers. Let's say we have a rockstar company. For 5 years straight, it's been churning out a solid 15% ROA, like clockwork. Then this year, it plummets down to just 8%. Yikes. I mean, on the surface, that looks absolutely terrible, doesn't it? But wait a minute. Before we hit that big red panic button, we have to look for the story behind that number. So what actually happened? Well, it turns out their total assets went through the roof. They jumped from $200 million all the way up to $350 million. They must have made a massive investment, like building a huge new factory. Now look at the profit. It barely budged. So you see, the ROA didn't drop because they got worse at making money. It dropped because the assets number in our little formula just got way, way bigger. And this right here is the big lesson. That scary drop in ROA, it wasn't a warning sign at all. It was actually the sign of a really smart move. Think of it this way. They just planted a huge tree that's going to produce tons of fruit. But it takes time to grow. The profits from that shiny new factory haven't started rolling in yet, but the massive cost of building it is already sitting there on the balance sheet. And you know, this is exactly what separates a good investor from a truly great one. It's understanding that these financial ratios, things like ROA, they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're clues. They're little pieces of a much bigger story about a company's strategy, where it's headed, and what its ambitions really are. So that really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? We've just seen how a number like ROA can tell a completely hidden story. So the next time you're looking at a financial report, ask yourself, what other numbers might look bad at first, but are actually whispering secrets about a brilliant future?